pre-modern normalcy. With all of the challenges that that offers, and there will be in any pattern of life that comes from long ago, certain values and laws and principles that the consensus of the modern world doesn't like at all. It's almost the case that one of the signs of the authenticity of a sacred tradition in today's world is that it's really hated and attacked. And a tradition that nobody minds particularly has probably made so many concessions to the spirit and the ethos of an essentially godless world that it's no longer being true to itself. So this is what we need to offer. Essentially, we need to offer the Prophet ﷺ as the solution, as a form of primordial life, as a way of being absolutely simple and absolutely human and absolutely ancient. In other words, to be a man of Allah. And that, of course, has the obvious gendered ramifications. One of the radical forms of ignorance in today's world is that not only, unlike all earlier generations, are we not sure where we're going after death and what life means and who made us, but we're very bad at answering those things. We're not even sure what it is to be a man and what it is to be a woman. And the sunnah of the chosen one, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the pattern of the Sahaba and the Sahabiyah shows us that. Not as a single pattern, because they're different. The Ummahat al-Mu'mineen have different temperaments. And you find amongst the Sahaba not some kind of totalitarian model, but a real human society in diversity. But still, a sense of what it is to be a man and to be a woman that is in many cases repugnant to modern sensibilities and is probably much more authentic as a result. One other thing that I think we need to bear in mind when we are defending the honour and the legacy of the Prophet ﷺ in the very caustic, difficult conditions of modernity is to insist against all of the polemicists that the modern world is not about diversity against religion, which is about uniformity. It's the other way around. One of the nastiest and silliest calumnies that is directed against Islam, not just by non-Muslims, but by non-Muslims, but also by some Muslims themselves, is the idea that Islam is a single thing. It's uniform and totalitarian. Whereas the modern world is the endless options. You can be a punk rocker or listen to rap music or go to Pt7 or be what you like or listen to what you like. It's about self-expression. They don't have a definition of what the self is, but they still want to express it. So instead we would insist that modernity tends towards uniformity, and that wherever it goes it spreads what cultural critics would refer to as a monoculture. That wherever you go in the world and you find this culture prevailing, and we can't even call it Western culture any longer, it's just modernity or the monoculture, you find indigenous local difference dying away in the face of Western sameness, whether it be the design of public buildings, or people's dress, or the languages that they use, or the set of values that they evince. A uniformity is taking the place of what used to be the beautiful and rich tapestry of human diversity, with its good and its negative aspects. There is a certain sameness that is coming over the world. The historic Islamic world, by contrast, was diverse. And this is a matter of some agitation amongst those who consider Islam to be nothing more than an ideology. But it's something in which we take pride because we can see that it's there as the expression of the اختلاف ألسنتكم وألوانكم, of which the Quran speaks as signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The difference of your colours and your languages are amongst Allah's signs. And historically, the Ummah of Islam presided over gigantic cultural diversity. Certain aspects of that, in some places, were outside the boundaries of the Sharia. We don't value diversity for its own sake, but nonetheless we value diversity because it shows the extraordinary diverse ways in which Allah has created human beings, not as individual genetic combinations, but as social combinations of types of human beings. That there is something rich and irreplaceable about the Muslims of Kano in Nigeria that is not found amongst the Muslims of Bahrain or the Muslims of Bosnia This is all part of the Islamic extension of the ancient principle of the difference of your languages and your colours. اختلاف ألسنتكم وألوانكم. That too is under threat. And many people outside the boundaries of the Ummah are also anxious about that. The human experience is increasingly impoverished. The new art of Japan looks very similar to the new art of Britain. The way people dress in Korea, very similar to the way people dress in Venezuela, and with each generation that becomes more pronounced. Increasingly you find that the only people who genuinely preserve a principle of difference in those things are the Muslims. And that again is something that we need not to be anxious about, but to hold up to the world as something that's irreplaceable, a kind of human biodiversity. To be ourselves, we have to be internally different. And of course there are certain core beliefs, aqa'id, where we're not supposed to be at odds with each other because they're about truths and there can only be one resolution. In many fiqh issues we are united, but in many others of course we have different madahib, different interpretations within different madahib. The fact that many of the Islamists hyperventilate when they see the difference amongst the fuqaha is just another sign of how deeply they've internalized the modern idea that one should follow an ideology rather than something like the sunnah of the chosen one, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This is another thing that we need to stress. Islam is the maintainer of diversity. And one of the beautiful things that you see in the big biographies of the lives of the Sahaba, and they are worth browsing in. Ibn Hajar perhaps has the longest one, Al-Isaba, 4 fat volumes, just the Sahaba in all of their difference. And even though those biographies tend to focus only on those things that are relevant to grading narrators and explaining how they worked in terms of hadith narration, still you find a real human community that is not, despite the unarguable centrality of the practice of following the Sunnah, uniform, but in fact an extraordinary diversity of human types. That the temperament of Ibn Mas'ud was very different from the temperament of Ibn Abbas. The temperament of Habiba was very different from the temperament of Aisha, and so on. Real difference amongst human beings, and that was all fine. The Holy Prophet ﷺ never sought to challenge that, but there is a certain way in which religion brings forth that which is part of our own uniqueness and individuality in a non-egotistic way. Religion cultivates human diversity at the same time as it imposes certain boundaries to our moral action and our possible beliefs. Again, this is something that we need to emphasize, partly because of the Western worry about the presence of Muslims. All of these Muslims in European cities, wherever you go across Europe, the biggest minority is now a Muslim minority. And because we're so, well, ultimately because of our love for the chosen one, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and our respect for the example that is set, we do look different, we behave differently, we have different values, and that causes a lot of people great anxiety. They want Europe to be a single totalitarian thing, and so they impose minaret bans and hijab bans, and in many ways the horizons are darkening simply because of our conspicuous difference. But to overcome those prejudices, we need first of all to present ourselves as an attractive and positive alternative to the increasing number of young people who are really alienated by modern alienation and are looking for a sacred pattern of life. To present ourselves as an alternative rather than just a kind of fortress or bunker of ethnic difference. And secondly, we need to be absolutely clear in our distinction between what is authentically from the tradition of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, which may include certain things that modernity will never like, and that's just too bad. And on the other hand, things that we've brought with us as part of our baggage from countries of origin that we should never have had in the first place. Honour killings, that kind of thing. Aberrant attachments to magic and putting spells on each other's, and cruel mothers-in-law, and the stuff that happens in many of our communities, which is part of the stuff that the Holy Prophet ﷺ came to do away with. The honour killings is part of the Jahiliyyah culture. magic